Check the depth of the jacket at the end. Make a test cut about 4 inches up. Break the jacket, and it'll be fairly hard to pull off. Now you can see here's Kevlar, a ripcord to rip back the jacket, binder tape, and tubes. Each of these tubes has fiber in it. In order to work with loose tube cable, we're going to need to open up a fairly large length of the jacket. We'll probably need about 3 to 6 feet. And the easiest way to do that is to use the ripcord. The way we do the ripcord is we take a pair of needle nose pliers, simple needle nose pliers, grab the ripcord and twist it around the jaws of the pliers. We just keep twisting. It's the old sardine can routine. And you notice it will just start going right down the jacket. If we're only doing a short distance, we can just twist it. But once we get far enough down the jacket that we have a hand grip, we can just grab the pliers, and now we want to push it along the jacket. Don't pull out from the jacket. Push right down the jacket, and we can take off all of the jacket we want. Down to the point we pull the ripcord, we take our jacket slitter again, ring the cable one more time, break the jacket at that point. Now we can go back to where we opened the cable up and pull the jacket off. It helps when you're pulling the jacket off to use the pliers to start the interior of the cable out of the jacket. Continue pulling the inside out until you reach the point at which you cut everything. You cut the jacket, and we can easily remove it. Now you see we have a large amount of Kevlar. We have to unweave this Kevlar. We can also pull it down at the end and cut it with Kevlar scissors. It's slippery, so it helps to hold it. And now we can slide that off the cable. We remove the binder tape. Cut off the binder tape and the pull cord, the rip cord. Now this particular cable has a heavy center strength member. It also has 2 flexible plastic fillers. It's a small fiber count cable. It only has 4 buffer tubes with fibers in them, all color-coded, and it has 2 buffer tubes that are unused. So we'll take a cutter and cut those off and remove those. Then we have the central strength member, which is a fiberglass rod to make it stiff. We don't need much of that. We'll use a small amount of that at the beginning to hold it in the splice closure. So we'll cut off that rod and discard that. And now all we have are some very messy buffer tubes. We'll clean those with what's called D-gel. D-gel or hydrosol are 2 trade names for moistened pads that are designed to remove the gel inside a cable. This is very, very efficient. It only takes a few swipes, and we can get the tubes nice and clean. You can then also use it to get it off your hands, and then it helps to have some wipes around to wipe your hands and then wipe each of the tubes to dry them off. Now, we've dried the tubes off. We're almost halfway there. The next thing we need to do is we need to get into the tubes to get to the fibers. There's two ways of doing that. The preferred way is to use this tool, which is a standard small coaxial buffer stripper. It's used for cutting the jacket of coaxial cable. We use it on the buffer tubes because what we want to do is we want to twirl it around and score the tube, and then we're going to break it over our finger. We don't want to, the amount that you have to twirl it depends on the tension on the stripper. What we want to do is score it, ideally, just snap it. Put it over your thumb, snap it the other way to break it off, just to make sure that you don't harm the fibers. And then pull the tube out and discard the tube. Clean the fibers. Now, I know what everybody's thinking at this stage, and that is that you've got to be able to use a standard stripper for this, wire stripper. And the answer is yes, people do it, and I'll show you how to do it. But I want to make sure that you understand I don't like this process. I don't think it's a good idea, and it does have the potential of harming the fibers unless you're very careful. However, people do it. Nick, bend until you break, twist, pull it off. Clean the fibers. Okay, so there's 3 of our tubes, and we'll do it again on the 4th one. Just make sure that if you're doing this, you have it set to a fixed level so that you know what level to do it at. Score, break, twist, pull the tube off, and clean. Okay. So that's how we handle, then, a loose tube cable.
Materials required: measuring tape, China marker, aramid shears, diagonal cutters, needle nose pliers preferably with rounded edges, cable snips, rotary cable slitter, fiber tube scorer, hook blade razor knife, lint-free wipes, Regent grade 99% alcohol, safety glasses, and gloves. Determine the location of the cable where the splice point is to be located. Adjust the cutting depth of the rotary cable slitter to approximately 90% of the jacket thickness. Ring cut the jacket at the approximate midpoint of the intended splice location. Flex the cable slightly at the cut to complete the opening of the jacket. If necessary, adjust the cutting depth and repeat the process until the jacket or armor is completely cut through. Ring cut the jacket approximately 2 inches from the previous cut. Adjust the cutting depth and repeat this process until the jacket or armor is completely cut through. With a cable knife or utility razor, cut the jacket or armor longitudinally between the 2 ring cuts. Cut completely through the jacket. Pry the jacket open at the cut and remove the cable core. If a second armor exists, repeat the same process. Locate a ripcord below the jacket or armor at the end of the cable. There will be 1 or 2 ripcords, typically yellow, blue, orange, or red, depending on the cable type. Using aramid shears, cut the ripcords in the middle of the opening. Using diagonal cutters, cut a notch in both exposed ends of the jacket next to the ripcords. Using round edge needle nose pliers, grab one end of the ripcord and wrap it around the plier jaws. With the ripcord in the notch created in the previous step, continue rotating the pliers, winding the ripcord around the plier's jaws. After pulling the ripcord with this method for 3 to 4 inches, it may be more efficient to grab the pliers in a T-handle fashion with the ripcord between your fingers and then pull along the length of the cable. Continue until the ripcord has been pulled to approximately 12 inches. Peel back the jacket material to expose the cable core. For single ripcord cables, gently pull the cable core through the opening created by the ripcords. Do not exceed the cable's minimum bend radius. Using the aramid shears or cable snips, carefully cut the yarns covering the cable core at approximate midsection of the exposed core. Locate the switchback point of the buffer tubes. If necessary, use the ripcords to expose more of the cable core until the switchback point is revealed. Depending on the cable design, distance between switchback points can be between 24 and 41 inches. The switchback point is now the new center of the splice location. Determine the length of the cable to be stripped according to the manufacturer's recommendation for splice and termination system utilized. Measure and mark the recommended length of the cable centered around the switchback point located during the previous step. Using the final cutting depth determined previously, ring cut the jacket at the marks and flex the cable slightly to complete the opening of the jacket at both locations. If the cable has multiple jackets, they must be removed in order and repeating as necessary. Locate a ripcord below the jacket or armor and set the cable from the ring cut to ring cut. If 2 ripcords exist under the jacket, repeat for the second ripcord and split the jacket. Remove the jacket material between the ring cuts to expose the cable core. For single ripcord cables, gently pull the cable core through the opening created by the ripcord. Do not exceed the cable's minimum bend radius. With aramid shears, cut off strength yarns, ripcords, and other materials covering the tubes, leaving about 12 inches of each from the end of the jacket. Using a cable knife or utility razor, cut the helically applied binder yards at approximately 3-inch intervals. Remove the binder yards from the cable to within 3 inches of the jacket on both ends. Make additional cuts in the binder yards if necessary. Beginning at the switchback point, carefully unwind and separate the buffer tubes from the core one at a time. Be careful not to kink the tubes during handling. If the tubes are covered with filling gel, clean them with the appropriate gel remover. If necessary, cut any remaining yarns or strings wrapped around the core of the central strength rod. It may be necessary to remove some outer coating off the strength member in order for the strength member to fit into the closure strength member bracket. Do so by using a hook blade knife and removing 1 to 2 inches of the outer coating. If the cable is armored, bond the armor of each end of the cable to an approved ground via suitable bond clamps or shield connector. To break out the fibers from the buffer tubes, use the appropriate size buffer tube shaver or slitter and follow the manufacturer's instructions. Remove fibers from the buffer tube. Use dry, lint-free wipes to remove the buffer tube gel from the exposed fibers. Prepare and splice fiber per the instructions of the applicable splice equipment manufacturer. Store fiber splice and excess fiber in splice tray.